right now, you probably know the make and model of your neighbor's car.
Oh, sure.
But, like, you have no idea what they actually do for a living. You know, you might wave to them when you take the trash out, but you don't even know their last name.
Right, it's that polite nod.
Exactly. We trade a polite nod across the lawn for this false sense of absolute security. So today, we're taking a deep dive into 3 cases where the greatest threat wasn't, a stranger in a dark alley.
No, it was the person they smiled at every single morning.
Yes. We're looking at a compilation of these real-life accounts from the YouTube channel Mr. Nightmare. But our mission today goes way beyond just sharing spooky stories.
Right, because we are breaking down the behavioral science behind them.
Exactly. We're going to explore the psychology of proximity, the illusion of safety, and how the very social rules we rely on to, keep our communities peaceful can actually be weaponized against us.
Yeah, and when we view these accounts through a sociological lens, they become these terrifyingly brilliant case studies, really. They reveal this blind spot in human psychology that we call proximity bias.
Proximity bias, right?
Yeah. We are just hardwired to assume that what is familiar and what is physically close to us is inherently safe.
Even when it's definitely not.
Exactly. And today, we're going to look at how different environments, from chaotic college dorms to these pristine suburbs, they offer different types of camouflage for people who know exactly how to exploit that bias.
Okay, so let's start with an environment that practically mass produces anonymity, right? Off-campus college housing.
Oh, yeah, the perfect place to hide.
Seriously. So our first account comes from a sophomore named Garrett, who ends up living in a co-op. And picture this place. It used to be an old hotel.
Okay.
So every single room has its own heavy-duty personal lock and key. It's cheap, it's highly transient, and you have dozens of young people constantly coming and going.
Lots of chaos.
Total chaos. But right in the middle of this typical college chaos, there is this extreme anomaly. There's an older woman, maybe late 50s.
Which is already out of place.
Very out of place. She walks with a severe limp, she has graying hair, and she wears this completely blank, vacant expression. And she just hangs out in the common kitchen while all these 19-year-olds are cooking instant ramen and, pre-gaming for parties.
But she doesn't interact.
Never. She never speaks, never participates. She just stands in the corner watching them.
Which, sociologically speaking, is an enormous behavioral red flag.
Right. Why is nobody saying anything?
Well, we have to look at the environment to understand why the alarm bells didn't ring for these students. In a transient community like a college co-op, cognitive dissonance actually becomes a survival mechanism.
Wait, how so?
So the brain encounters a piece of information that doesn't fit.
Like a silent 50-year-old woman in a frat house.
Right, exactly. And instead of addressing it, the brain rationalizes it just to avoid social friction. The students likely told themselves, oh, she's an eccentric alumni, or maybe a university staff member keeping an eye on things.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy, because the way they ignored her is just fascinating to me.
Go for it.
It's like the human brain in this massive co-op is acting like antivirus software running a quick scan.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so when there are hundreds of variables changing every day, new roommates, massive parties, exams, the brain just ignores low-level anomalies to save processing power.
Right.
The woman was essentially a corrupted file in a very large operating system, and everyone just clicked ignore.
That is a highly accurate way to frame it, actually. The students were experiencing the diffusion of responsibility.
Meaning everyone assumes someone else knows who she is.
Exactly. Nobody wants to ask the awkward question. I mean, that they're in this hyper-focused temporary phase of life. In polite society, pointing out the odd person out is considered rude, and young people especially do not want to be the one to make the room uncomfortable.
Right. But ignoring the corrupted file doesn't fix the glitch. It just escalates.
Always does.
So one night, it's freezing cold outside, and Garrett looks out his bedroom window. This woman is standing not on the sidewalk, but dead in the middle of the street, staring straight up at his specific window.
Terrifying.
Right. Now, Garrett does what I think a lot of us would do. He feels that extreme social awkwardness, so he defaults to politeness.
Oh, no.
Yeah. He gives her a little wave,
Of course he does.
and instead of waving back, she starts jumping up and down like a toddler, and then sprints away into the dark.
Wow.
And I have to push back on what happens to him next, because by waving, Garrett is just exercising basic human decency. But he gets punished for it.
He was exercising decency, yeah, but he fundamentally misunderstood the rules of the ecosystem he was living in.
What do do you mean?
Well, the other students were surviving by maintaining the illusion of invisibility. By waving, Garrett pierced that veil of anonymity. He confirmed to her that he saw her.
Oh,
And far more dangerously, he confirmed exactly which room was his.
geez, yeah.
He accidentally volunteered himself as a protagonist in whatever fragmented narrative was playing out in her compromised mind.
And that narrative gets incredibly dark. Because soon after the wave, Garrett starts finding her snooping around his door in the middle of the night. Yeah, and then comes the inciting incident. Garrett loses his room key.
Oh, in a retrofitted hotel. That's bad.
Right, that physical key is the literal only barrier between him and the rest of this chaotic house. So a few nights later, he wakes up at 2 a.m. He hears this soft, rhythmic sound coming from inside his own closet.
Inside the room.
Inside the room, bump, bump, every 20 seconds.
That is, I can't even imagine.
Garrett, to his credit, doesn't pull the covers over his head. He walks over, rips the closet door open, and just screams.
What did he see?
The woman is standing inside his closet in the pitch black. Her eyes are wide open. She's holding a massive kitchen knife, and she has one of Garrett's own neckties wrapped tightly around her throat.
See, that detail right there, the tie, is what transitions this from a simple trespassing issue into a profound psychological crisis.
Because it's his tie.
Yes, it's highly ritualistic behavior.
Right.
It indicates a severe fixation on Garrett, specifically, intertwining her own distress with his personal belongings.
Well, she lunges at him, but Garrett manages to wrestle her to the ground and screams until his housemates finally rush in and help subdue her.
Thank goodness.
The police arrive, they search her, and they find Garrett's missing room key right in her pocket.
Wow.
Yeah, but the reveal of who this woman actually was, that is the part that completely shifts the blame in this entire scenario.
It really forces us to look past the immediate threat to the systemic failure behind it all.
Exactly. Because the police discovered she wasn't an alumni. She wasn't associated with the university at all. She was the property manager's sister.
Which changes everything.
She was suffering from severe, untreated psychiatric issues. And instead of securing her the professional care she desperately needed, her brother essentially stashed her in an unoccupied room in this college co-op.
Just to keep her under the radar.
Yeah, to avoid the financial or emotional burden of dealing with it properly. It's just institutional negligence disguising itself as a quirky roommate.
Precisely. The property manager weaponized the social dynamics of college housing. I mean, he understood proximity bias and the apathy of 19-year-olds.
He knew they wouldn't demand a background check.
Right. They would just put their heads down, study, and mind their own business. The woman in the closet was a dangerous threat in that moment, yes, but she was also a victim of profound neglect. The true architect of that horror was the landlord who exploited a temporary community to hide a permanent crisis.
Man. So, okay, Garrett's situation relied on a chaotic, apathetic crowd to mask the danger.
Yes.
But anonymity isn't the only way to hide in plain sight. Sometimes the absolute most effective camouflage isn't a crowd at all. It's intimacy.
A totally different kind of cover.
Exactly. So let's move from a grungy college co-op to the pristine, quiet, heavily manicured lawns of an affluent suburban street.
That is a completely different psychological ecosystem. In the suburbs, the baseline expectation of safety is astronomically high.
Right.
Which ironically creates a massive blind spot.
And we see that blind spot perfectly in our next account. So the narrator here is a retired woman who spends her afternoons sitting on her front porch, knitting, and listening to true crime podcasts.
The irony.
Oh, it's so ironic. She is incredibly observant of her neighborhood's rhythms. She watches a new neighbor move in across the street, a guy named Quinn, mid-20s.
Okay.
He drives a flashy BMW, works in the entertainment industry, and appears to be this highly successful, totally normal guy.
Seems like a great neighbor.
Yeah, and soon, the retired neighbor notices Quinn has a new girlfriend, Ellie. Young, blonde, drives a white convertible, and the neighbor repeatedly sees Ellie letting herself into the house with her own key when Quinn's BMW isn't in the driveway.
Which, to anyone watching from the porch, that simply looks like a modern relationship progressing.
Just normal couple stuff.
Right. Giving someone a key to your home is a major societal milestone. It's the ultimate symbol of trust, inviting someone into your most private, secure space.
But the observant neighbor starts noticing friction. She witnesses a massive screaming match in the driveway. Ellie is throwing her arms up, looking completely unhinged before speeding off in her convertible.
Okay, trouble in paradise.
Big time.
Yeah.
But despite the fight, the neighbor keeps seeing Ellie's car parked at Quinn's house day after day when he is at work.
That's strange.
The retired neighbor's gut tells her something is wrong. She actually wants to intervene or say something to Quinn, but her husband tells her to, quote, mind your own business.
Ah, there it is.
And then comes the night with the sirens.
Oh, boy.
The retired neighbor wakes up to flashing lights, rushes outside, and watches paramedics carry Quinn out of his house on a stretcher covered in blood.
Oh, my gosh.
Minutes later, police lead Ellie out in handcuffs, and she has this completely blank, emotionless expression.
That's a huge, violent escalation. But the mechanics of how that escalation was planned is what makes this a textbook study in modern behavioral manipulation.
Yes. And here is where it gets really interesting. Because when Quinn survives and gets out of the hospital, he reveals the truth to the retired neighbor.
What happened?
Ellie was never given a key.
Wait, really?
Never. She had secretly stolen Quinn's spare key and made a covert copy. She had taken his phone while he was sleeping and permanently shared his location with her own device.
Wow.
And the reason she was letting herself in during the day wasn't to drop off groceries. She had planted hidden microcameras in his bedroom and living room.
You're kidding.
Nope. Her frequent afternoon visits were just to replace the memory cards and batteries.
That is wow.
When Quinn eventually tried to initiate a break in their relationship, Ellie watched his every move on her surveillance feed, anticipated his routine, let herself in with the copied key, and attacked him with a knife.
What Ellie created there is what sociologists call a digital panopticon.
Wait, a panopticon? Isn't that the architectural concept for a prison? Like where the guard tower is in the center and the prisoners never know exactly when they're being watched?
Yes, exactly right. They have to assume they are always being watched.
Right.
Ellie built a virtual prison inside Quinn's own sanctuary. And the reason this is so vital to understand is how it highlights the weaponization of modern intimacy.
What do you mean by that?
Well, 50 years ago, if a partner wanted to monitor you to that degree, they had to physically stalk you.
Yeah, sit in a car with binoculars.
Right. They had to sit in a parked car down the street. It was high effort and highly visible. Neighbors would notice. But today, asymmetric surveillance, where one person holds all the data and the other is completely blind, is cheap, accessible, and totally invisible.
It's terrifying. Think about your own street right now as you're listening to this. If you see a young woman in a nice car unlocking a front door, your brain immediately categorizes it as safe.
You don't assume she's a malicious actor changing camera batteries.
Right, so I have to ask, was this retired neighbor sitting on her porch consuming true crime for entertainment while a literal true crime was meticulously planned 50 feet away? Was she just a victim of the false security of wealth?
It's a combination, really. The camouflage of wealth and the camouflage of domesticity. Affluent neighborhoods offer intense privacy. Houses are set back from the street, fences are high, and neighbors respect boundaries.
People pay a premium for that isolation.
Exactly. But that very isolation is what allowed Ellie's digital panopticon to exist unnoticed. She didn't have to break a window or pick a lock. She smiled, waved to the neighbors, and turned Quinn's own home into a trap. The rules of suburban politeness, the husband saying, mind your own business, acted as an accessory to the crime.
That is deeply unsettling because it shows how our polite avoidance of other people's drama can actually be fatal.
Yes.
And that bridges us right into our final account, which takes this idea of neighborhood camouflage and scales it up to an industrial level.
Oh, this one.
Yeah. We've seen a threat forced upon someone by a landlord and a threat invited in through a relationship. But what happens when an entire neighborhood is subjected to a massive, engineered acoustic illusion?
This third case is perhaps the most sophisticated manipulation of social friction in our entire deep dive today.
It's wild. Okay, so we have a young guy who moved to a highly desirable, low-crime neighborhood for a fresh start. The lots are huge, the houses are spaced far apart, but right next door to him is a massive 10-bedroom mansion.
Okay.
Wanting to establish that baseline neighborhood safety, he goes over to introduce himself. He knocks, expecting maybe an older executive, but he's greeted by Damon.
Amen.
Yeah, a guy in his late 20s with a mullet. Damon claims he works in finance, but he can't name his firm. He's incredibly vague. And the most glaring anomaly, Damon lives in this colossal, multi-million-dollar mansion completely alone.
Which architecturally and socially makes no sense.
None at all. And the narrator, who works from a home office overlooking Damon's property, realizes Damon lives like a total ghost. There are no visitors, no romantic partners, no parties, not even an Amazon package or pizza delivery.
Just an empty shell.
His car just sits frozen in the driveway. It stays like this for months until a random Wednesday night. At 2 a.m., the narrator is jolted awake by heavy bass and blaring music.
Out of nowhere.
He looks out his window and suddenly there are 7 unfamiliar cars parked in Damon's driveway. It sounds like a massive house party. The narrator walks over to ask him to turn the music down. He knocks on the door, but nobody answers. The music just keeps thumping.
Naturally.
The next morning, it's still playing.
Wait, still?
Still playing. He goes back over, knocks again, and out of frustration, he tries the handle. The front door just swings wide open.
And this is the threshold where the environment fundamentally shifts from a neighborhood nuisance to a high-level threat.
He walks into the grand foyer and sees a pile of at least 10 pairs of shoes.
Okay.
But as he looks around, the house is entirely empty. There are no Solo cups scattered around, no coats, no people sleeping on couches. And when he stops and actively listens to the blaring music, a chill just goes down his spine.
It wasn't a real party.
He realizes it's not a DJ or a playlist. It's an audio recording, playing on a continuous loop.
Creepy.
A highly produced track of overlapping voices laughing, people yelling over a beat, and glasses clinking. It is a completely fake party.
The audio loop is just a masterful piece of psychological misdirection.
But the terror doesn't stop in the foyer. The narrator notices a door, slightly ajar, leading down to the basement.
Go down there.
He creeps down the stairs. The basement is dark, but there's harsh industrial light spilling from a back room. Underneath the sound of the fake party track playing upstairs, he begins to hear a rhythmic mechanical grinding coming from that back room.
Oh, no.
It sounds exactly like heavy machinery, like a buzzsaw.
Wow.
And then the smell hits him, this overwhelming chemical suffocating scent of industrial bleach.
That is horrifying.
He peeks through a crack in the door and sees 3 men. They look nothing like Damon. They are significantly older, and they are wearing heavy-duty work coveralls, protective goggles, thick rubber gloves, and heavy work boots.
A disposal team.
Yeah. The narrator's survival instinct finally kicks in. He realizes he has stumbled into something lethal. He bolts up the stairs, silently jumps his fence, and hides in the dark of his own home office. Minutes later, he watches 8 older men pour out of Damon's house, scanning the street with flashlights, hunting for whoever just opened their front door.
They knew someone was there.
Yeah, Damon is nowhere to be seen. By the next morning, every car is gone. Days turn into weeks, the grass grows long, and Damon never returns.
It is a phenomenal account of an illicit operation, but the real genius is in the staging.
Okay, let's unpack the logic here, because at first glance, it makes no sense.
How so?
Well, if you are a criminal enterprise operating a disposal team with buzzsaws and bleach in a basement, why blast a fake party audio track and leave a decoy pile of shoes in the entryway? Doesn't a 2 a.m. house party put a massive neon sign on your hideout?
You'd think so, but
Wait, are they weaponizing social awkwardness?
you are hitting right on the underlying mechanism. It is not a neon sign. It is a highly effective, engineered social barrier. Think about evolutionary psychology and how humans handle social friction. If you hear a loud crash next door at midnight, your brain categorizes that as an emergency. You call 911.
Right.
But if you hear a loud party, your brain categorizes that as a nuisance. And people in polite society avoid confronting a nuisance. They peek out their blinds, they grumble to their spouse, they put in earplugs, and they vow to complain to the HOA the next morning.
So they intentionally chose a nuisance over an anomaly.
Exactly. The recording of the laughter and the heavy bass perfectly masked the acoustic frequency of the mechanical tools in the basement.
That is so dark.
And the decoy shoes in the foyer served as a visual deterrent. If a neighbor or a burglar looked through the front window, they would see concrete evidence of a crowded house. No one barges into a house they believe is packed with 10 people.
It's brilliant, honestly. They essentially built an invisible fence out of neighborhood etiquette. And the detail that confirms this was a calculated strategy is what the narrator found out the next day.
What did he find out?
When he finally went to his other neighbors to ask if they heard the insane party, none of them had heard a thing.
Which brings us back to the architecture of the suburbs. The perpetrators chose that specific house because of the isolation of the neighborhood. The massive lots, the wide spacing of the houses, the deep setbacks from the street, the very features that affluent families buy to guarantee their safety and quiet.
Made it the absolute perfect staging ground.
For an industrial-scale criminal operation, the crew understood the acoustics of the neighborhood, and more importantly, they understood the social dynamics of tired, wealthy professionals who will almost always choose passive avoidance over active confrontation.
So, what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've gone from a college student fighting for his life against a corrupted file in his dorm to a guy nearly murdered by his girlfriend's asymmetric digital surveillance.
To an entire neighborhood duped by a fake party covering up a disposal team.
Exactly. When we look at the behavioral science across all three of these accounts, the common thread is glaringly obvious. The most dangerous threats in our modern world do not look like monsters hiding in the dark.
No, they don't.
They look like a quirky older roommate. They look like a beautiful girl in a white convertible. They look like a loud college party next door. Now, the goal of this deep dive is definitely not to make you wildly paranoid about every single person you see watering their lawn.
Yes, don't be.
But it is a call to be highly observant of the social context around you. When something feels fundamentally off, when a person's behavior does not match their environment, or when your gut tells you a boundary is being crossed, pay attention. Do not let societal politeness override your evolutionary survival instincts.
That is the essential takeaway. We rely heavily on the invisible contract of safety, but that contract only holds if everyone is playing by the same rules. And as we've explored today, malicious actors study those rules specifically to break them.
It completely changes how you view a quiet street.
It should. And I want to leave you with one final forward-looking thought to mull over as you lock your doors tonight.
Lay it on us.
We just examined how people use physical decoys, like a pile of shoes or a copied brass key to manipulate our trust. But as smart homes, biometric locks, and AI surveillance become the standard in every neighborhood, we have to ask a terrifying question.
Okay.
Are we automating this camouflage? Will the next generation of bad neighbors even need to go through the trouble of building a fake party? Or will algorithms and deepfakes simply project the perfect, flawless illusion of safety directly to our phones while our real-world gut instincts completely atrophy?
Oh man, now that is a thought that will keep you awake. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious and maybe take a slightly closer look at the house next door.